May 5th, 2009, 6:43 a.m. A man calls 911. His voice trembles. My wife isn't answering. She always answers. By 7:05 a.m., 3 people are dead. A wife, 2 boys, ages 11 and 9, strangled in their beds. The husband, he was at the gym, or so he says. But here's what the husband didn't know. Dead bodies don't lie, and neither does rigor mortis. Welcome to The Untold Trace. This is the story of Chris Coleman, a man who killed his family to start a new life with his mistress. But his perfect plan had one fatal flaw. He forgot that sometimes the truth is written on the very walls of your crime scene, in your own handwriting, in blood-red spray paint. This is the Coleman family murders. Columbia, Illinois, population 10,000, a quiet suburb across the Mississippi River from St. Louis. The kind of place where neighbors know each other's names and kids play in the streets until dark. Chris and Sheri Coleman seemed to have it all. Chris, 32, was a former Marine who'd risen to become the personal bodyguard of Joyce Meyer, one of America's most famous televangelists. His salary? $100,000 a year. His job? Protecting a woman who preached to millions worldwide, traveling in private jets to conferences across America and international crusades overseas. Sheri, 31, was a former Air Force MP turned devoted mother. She'd met Chris at a canine training seminar in San Antonio in May 1997. She was 19, he was 20. 3 months of dating, then pregnant. They married quickly. Their sons, Garrett and Gavin, were 11 and 9. Bright kids, loved baseball and football. Neighbors called them always smiling. From the outside, the Colemans were the perfect Christian family. Chris's parents were evangelical pastors. The family attended church, went on mission trips, lived in a beautiful 2-story home on Robert Drive. But Sheri knew something her neighbors didn't. Days before her death, she told a friend, "If something happens to me, Chris did it." She knew her husband was capable of murder. She just didn't know how little time she had left. November 14th, 2008. An email arrives from destroychris@gmail.com. Subject line, Chris's family. They are dead. The message is filled with obscenities and terror. If Joyce doesn't quit preaching, then they will die. During the Houston conference, I will kill them all as they sleep. I know where he lives, and I know they are alone. Whoever sent this knew Chris's travel schedule, knew Joyce Meyer's itinerary, knew when the family would be vulnerable. More threats followed. In January 2009, an unsigned letter appeared in the mailbox. Deny your God publicly, or else. Time is running out for you and your family. The word opportunities was misspelled as opportunities. In April, a final warning. This is my last warning. Your worst nightmare is about to happen. Chris contacted police. His neighbor, Detective Sergeant Justin Barlow, installed a security camera aimed directly at the Coleman mailbox. Extra patrols were scheduled. The family was under watch. But the real threat wasn't some religious fanatic stalking the family. The real threat slept beside Sheri every night. Tuesday morning, Chris Coleman left home at 5:43 a.m., heading to his gym in South St. Louis County. While there, he called Sheri twice, sent texts, no response. At 6:43 a.m., driving back across the Jefferson Barracks Bridge, he called Detective Barlow. Sheri's not answering. She always answers by now. Barlow immediately called for backup. He arrived at the Coleman house at 6:50 a.m. with another officer. They rang the doorbell. No answer. Around back, they found an open window, the screen leaning against patio furniture. They climbed through. The chemical smell of spray paint hit them first. Then they saw the walls. Blood-red graffiti everywhere. You have paid. Punished. I am always watching. They climbed the stairs to the bedrooms. Sheri Coleman, naked, face down, already cold, already in rigor mortis. Down the hall, Garrett, 11 years old, strangled, spray paint on his walls. Next room, Gavin, 9 years old, strangled, paint on his body. All 3 had been killed by ligature strangulation, strangled with a cord. Sheri's hair was found on Gavin's body, suggesting she'd been killed first. At 6:56 a.m., Chris arrived home. Police stopped him outside. When they told him his family was dead, he cried. But he never asked how they died. He never tried to go inside. And he kept trying to hide something, scratches on his arm. Here's what Chris didn't know. Rigor mortis had already set in, and rigor mortis doesn't lie. The medical examiner would later place time of death between 11 p.m. on May 4th and 3 a.m. on May 5th. They died while Chris was still in the house. Police interviewed Chris for nearly 6 hours. When you left the house this morning, was your wife alive? Oh yeah, but the evidence said otherwise. The spray paint. Chris claimed he didn't have any, but credit card receipts showed he'd purchased bright red Rust-Oleum spray paint, the exact same brand, in February 2009. The handwriting. The words on the walls matched Chris's handwriting perfectly. The security camera, Barlow's camera, installed to catch the person making threats, showed no suspicious activity. No one entered the house after Chris left that morning. The timeline. The drive from the Jefferson Barracks Bridge usually takes 7 minutes. Chris took 13 minutes. What was he doing? Disposing of evidence? Waiting for police to discover the bodies first? Most damning of all, the threatening emails were traced to Chris's own laptop, using his personal login credentials. That unique misspelling of opportunities. A search of Chris's computer found the same misspelling multiple times in his personal documents. He had been threatening himself, setting up an alibi, planning this for months. But why? The answer wore a promise ring. Her name was Tara Lintz, a 31-year-old cocktail waitress from St. Petersburg, Florida. She'd been Sheri's best friend in high school. In November 2008, Sheri innocently suggested Tara attend a Joyce Meyer conference where Chris was working. Tara went. 9 days later, the first threatening email was sent. What Chris called just friendship was actually an obsession. Police found hundreds of sexually explicit photos and videos on both their devices, sex tapes from Hawaii and Arizona, promise rings they wore together, a detailed note on Chris's phone listing everything about Tara, her ring size, favorite flowers, sexual preferences, and this. Our daughter's name, Zoe Lynn Coleman. In her calendar, Tara had scheduled wedding to Chris Coleman for January 2010. Tara testified that Chris told her he'd serve Sheri with divorce papers on May 4th or 5th. But there was a problem. Joyce Meyer Ministries had a strict policy. Employees caught in affairs would be fired. Multiple ministry employees confirmed this at trial. Chris stood to lose his $100,000 salary, his prestigious position, his entire lifestyle. So on May 4th, 2009, for the first time anyone could remember, Chris called in sick to work. And early the next morning, he strangled his wife, then walked down the hall and murdered his 2 sleeping sons. During their funeral, Chris texted Tara, "I love you. I miss you." He wore his promise ring under a Band-Aid. Chris Coleman was arrested on May 19, 2009. His trial began April 25, 2011, exactly 2 years after the murders. The jury deliberated 15 hours over 2 days. At first, they were deadlocked 7-5 for not guilty. They sent a note, "We are a hung jury." But then they found something. A photo on Tara's BlackBerry, almost overlooked. Chris and Tara kissing. Date stamped, October 21, 2008. Both had testified the affair started in November. They'd lied. On May 5, 2011, exactly 2 years after he murdered his family, Chris Coleman was found guilty on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. Judge Milton Wharton sentenced him to 3 life terms without possibility of parole, narrowly avoiding the death penalty, as Illinois had abolished capital punishment in March 2011. As Coleman was driven away in a sheriff's car, about 150 people gathered outside the courthouse and cheered, and motorists honked their horns. Sheri's mother sobbed with relief. Chris Coleman was initially sent to Pontiac Correctional Center in Illinois, but in August 2011, he was transferred to Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin for safety reasons. In December 2012, the bodies of Sheri, Garrett, and Gavin were exhumed from their graves in Chester, Illinois, and relocated to Sheri's hometown outside Chicago, away from the Coleman family name forever. Chris's appeals were denied in 2014 and again in 2015. In a 2018 prison interview with Crime Watch Daily, he maintained his innocence, claiming someone else had access to his laptop. His father, Pastor Ron Coleman, defended him. Tara was just meeting a need that Sheri wasn't taking care of. Every man has his desires. If your wife doesn't respect you, then you're going to find respect someplace else. Some needs, it seems, are worth more than the lives of two innocent boys. Today, as of 2025, Chris Coleman, now 48 years old, remains at Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, serving life without parole. Ironically, he shares that prison with another family annihilator, Chris Watts, who murdered his pregnant wife and two daughters in 2018 for his mistress. Two men, two Chris's, two families destroyed. Both chose their affairs over their children's lives. Sheri Coleman's family sued Joyce Meyer Ministries, arguing they should have suspected Chris sent the threats and warned Sheri. The lawsuit was dismissed in 2013. In Columbia, Illinois, a memorial pavilion stands in honor of Sheri, Garrett, and Gavin, funded by nearly $11,000 in community donations. A reminder that even in a town rated safer than 69% of America, sometimes the greatest danger comes from within. Sheri knew. Days before her death, she told a friend, "If something happens to me, Chris did it." She knew the man who promised to love and protect her, the father who tucked their sons into bed, the Christian who worked for God. She knew he was capable of murder. She just ran out of time to escape. This has been The Untold Trace. The Coleman family murders remind us that evil doesn't always arrive through unlocked windows or threatening emails. Sometimes it arrives dressed as a devoted husband. Sometimes it wears a promise ring. Sometimes it spray paints lies on the walls while the truth lies dead upstairs. And sometimes, the only person who sees it coming can't stop what's already in motion. Rest in peace, Sheri, Garrett, and Gavin Coleman. Your story will not be forgotten.